Hello, this is Tucker, the teen host on A Matter of Interpretation in Americans in Crisis. Now, before we get started, I'd like to say a prayer, so if we all could, bow your heads and close your eyes, please. Lord, thank you for this day, of course, and letting us be here today. Lead, guide, and direct us for what we have to say. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so today's topic is youth and education of youth. So, we have someone here today. Please introduce your name and, of course, yourself, and just tell us about you.
My name is Nicole Finley, and I'm a JCPS teacher at DuPont Manual High School.
Awesome. What classes do you teach?
Currently, I teach AP Lit and Comp, that's literature and composition, as well as junior English with African American Lit and with a focus on women's studies.
Oh, wow. What do you feel is the definition of a teacher instructor? What is their job to do?
Not teach cover to cover.
All right.
Is the primary task of a teacher, and to wake up each day wanting to be the positive difference that we seek and feel we need to see in the world.
Do teachers really have an effect on students and their environments?
Absolutely. Teachers have the power to make a positive impact or, unfortunately, a negative impact, but we do hold a lot of power just because of our interaction and the availability that we have to kids, to students, to pupils.
Okay. Could you give an example?
In a positive way and a negative way?
Yes.
In a positive way, that encouragement daily,
Mm-hmm.
that commitment daily, that involvement, that follow-up every day, that greeting every day, that smile every day can really make or break a student who struggles with, it could be they can have struggles at home, they have struggles in the classroom, but just that interaction alone, you know, besides the instruction, just that interaction alone can really make a positive impact on that student. Much like, you know, because we see that child every day, right? A lot of times we see those children more so than their parents see them awake, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side of that, teachers who discourage and who are overly critical.
Could you give an example on that? What do you mean?
It could be as much as I'm an English teacher. I always try and keep balance. I don't write in red ink, right? But say for instance, if you do grade papers in red and all of your comments, all of your commentary is negative. That's a negative, you know, and then along with that, there's not a greeting.
Okay, so like sandwiching the good and bad. Okay,
and
gotcha.
You know, but on the flip side, if you have the negative and it's not a greeting, you're writing in red, and the only interaction that you have with a child is, you know, you calling them, and they get the wrong answer. There's no praise when they get it right. That could really tarnish the child as well.
Okay, so I guess how would you say the difference between a good teacher versus a overly critical teacher or a soft teacher? You know what I mean by a soft teacher? Like a teacher that doesn't really teach the child, yet it just wants, I don't know, like how, do you know?
Anymore, because I'm 20 years in.
Okay.
I don't necessarily, I try and stray away from the whole good teacher, bad teacher.
Okay.
And I try to get into the effective or the ineffective teacher.
Okay. Can you explain that?
Yeah, because, like, you know, I do believe, it's my firm belief that teachers go into teaching because they truly do believe that they can make a positive difference in a child's life. Like, when we start out, it's like, I'm ready for this. This is my contribution to society, to the world. This is my way of making a change. I want to be that teacher that I thought that I didn't get when I was in school, and, you know, there's more kids like me. But as you get into the system, sometimes the system can change teachers. Like, if you look at the pension crisis,
Okay.
right? You look at the news, you look at all the political, you know, atmosphere right now.
Yeah.
That can be quite discouraging. So you have a good teacher who might feel like their efforts they're done in vain, like they're not necessarily as appreciated.
Gotcha.
So they're a good teacher, but they're human.
Yeah.
So
we all are, yeah.
much like a student, if someone's badgering you each and every single day, telling you that you're not doing this, you're not doing that, and you have so much on the line, like a kid, it's their education, that's a lot on the line. For a teacher, that's that's their life. That's what they have student loan debt for, many of us. And here it is that you're a thug, you're a, you call school off, you're the reason why kids are getting, molested at home or whatnot. It's very difficult for those teachers who are really passionate about those children and what they believe in to go in there every day and feel effective. So therefore, sometimes it channels through, and they may not be their best, because in order to go into the classroom each day, you have to be emotionally balanced, because you're dealing with a minimum of 153 different personalities per day. And along with those 153 personalities comes sometimes, you got single parent households, but then along with that you have, both parents are there, you got grandparents. So for each one of those children, you've got a multitude of people that are attached to them, and we have to balance all of that along with the political commentary. So it can be very difficult for some teachers. So I don't say necessarily they're bad teachers, I just think they're human. So sometimes we're more effective than other times.
Gotcha.
So I try not to say, bad teacher, good teacher.
Yeah, I understand.
And then we talk about like a slow or a soft teacher, that goes with personality, right? So you might have a teacher who, that doesn't make them ineffective because they're a little bit more lenient than others.
Okay.
Or even if they're less structured than others.
Teaching style.
Yeah, because say for instance, you look at students' backpacks. I've been amongst students whose backpacks look like a torpedo has blown off inside it, right? But if I ask them for something, they can go in the midst of that chaos. And I'm like, well, where's your blah, blah, blah? It's right here. Bloop, and they can pull it right out in the midst of it. It works for them. So it doesn't mean necessarily that's a bad teacher.
Okay.
It means that may be their style. That's how they function. And there are students who appreciate that softness because there are students who have that harshness at home. So it's rewarding for them to come and find someone who's not going to be so abrasive. So, I just try and look at it that way. Like, not for a certain student, it might not be as well meshed of a relationship. It might not be the best learning atmosphere for a particular student, depending on their learning style. But that doesn't necessarily mean that teacher's bad because it doesn't work for that student.
Okay.
It means that as an educational institution that we should do a better job with, putting kids together with the proper teachers so they can have the best learning possible.
Okay. And as in part one, and what you were saying about how you have to deal with a ton of personalities, which I totally get, and now I'm realizing. So I'm wondering, how are you trained to be a teacher? Because you have all these jobs, and you have all of these, I guess, standards that you have to build on yourself,
So your question is what? How do you balance that?
I guess, how are you trained to go into the classroom and teach?
Okay, because that's...
Or do you have to build that yourself as you go
literally
along?
have to, because training, it's literally on-the-job training. So, like, when I came through school, I never once took a class on classroom management.
Okay.
There was not a class that said, this is what you do when little Johnny cusses you out. Like, this is part A, B, C.
Okay.
No. There's not anything, there's not a protocol, right?
Gotcha.
And if you come from an environment, like you say, the soft teacher, right, who just really wants to have that passion to want to be that positive difference, they come from that type of background. There's not a training that's going to teach, when they're in college, it's going to teach that teacher how to deal with that situation, right? That's literally on-the-job training for them at that particular time.
Gotcha, so all that experience.
So it's all about experience, and it's also all about trust.
Okay.
So that teacher will have to trust themselves that they can handle that situation.
So have that sort of confidence?
Exactly. Then they're going to have to trust that they have surrounded themselves with an administration that's going to support them through that, whether it be good or bad. When I began teaching, I was in one of the worst schools in the state of Kentucky. I've seen teachers to have issues with students. And it can go either way. If you've got a really good administration, they're going to walk you through that. Like, how do you feel if a kid has handled you, or assaulted you? Imagine how scared you are. Imagine, your confidence level from that moment on. If you have a good administrator, they're going to tell you, like, this is normal, these things can happen. Here's some things you can do differently next time. Here's some things, to get help to move you forward, to help get your confidence back. So, it's just like what you're saying, it's like on-the-job training, but you just really, you really don't know what there's a lot of situations where you don't really know if that is the best response until after that situation has occurred.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, building on the experience, yeah.
Right, so as far as training, it's just, you know, I don't think college prepares you for that as much as they do the content. For the content, absolutely. How to frame a lesson, absolutely. But how to deal with an irate parent, how to...
it's all in your common sense and confidence and experience.
Yes. So, you know, but if you have, again, a teacher who is not experienced with at-risk kids, you have to understand they too are coming from a place, you know, of they're very unaware of how to approach a situation. You know, because you talk about, like, you know, for me, it might be easy for me if I'm in an at-risk school and I see an African-American child who, you know, might show some aggressive behavior and might say, oh man, this is stupid, and push himself back. For me, that's frustration. For me, that's a kid who just probably is like, okay, this is difficult for them to process. That's where that's coming from. But for someone who's not used to being around those types of children, that can be a very scary situation for them if they're not from that culture. If they're not used to being around kids who don't look like them or whatnot, or at-risk kids, and they see that, that could be like threat. So their response to that is, you know, that's when it gets into, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How problems can kind of arise. So
most definitely. And so I also heard you talk about the struggle of some kids. And I want to get more into that because definitely a lot of people are struggling in school. But, you know, it's normal sometimes. I mean, they just hide it. But I guess one thing for me is that struggle actually helps the student. Do you agree with this?
Some struggle.
Okay.
I think in the long run.
Okay.
I think struggle, you know, because what does Frederick Douglass say? If there is no struggle, there is no progress. So I completely agree with that, but I think that we do have to look at the type of struggle that kids, because like teachers who are not necessarily equipped to handle certain situations because they've not been exposed and they're dealing with kids who are like our pride and joy or everything, right? We have the power to do great harm. Our inexperience, our ignorance can really cause great harm to a child. That's struggle. If we allow certain types of struggle for kids to endure, that can cause a lifetime of pain and agony. And sometimes, unfortunately, it can be unrecoverable.
Yeah. So
I don't necessarily agree. I think the struggle is good, but I think when we're talking about in the realms of a school, I think that it should be, that scope should be very limited to the type of struggle that we expose kids to. There's certain things they should not have to struggle within those parameters.
Most definitely. So I'm just going to break it up to categories just a little bit. So academically versus, you know, live homework. Well, not homework, but yeah, sure, homework. I guess academically, do you feel like the struggle is worth it?
More doesn't mean better, right? So we talk about the homework. So I'm not a big fan of like a bunch of unnecessary homework. Everything should be purposeful. But as far as the academic struggle, as far as challenging your mind, being challenged to think outside the box, the challenge of debate or of argument, you know, everything's an argument, right? So everything's an argument. So referring to the book in the class. To be able to appreciate and respect both sides of the argument, not necessarily to agree, so that you can have an understanding. I think that challenge, that struggle is good because so many times we come from different backgrounds, right? So
it may build or change your perspective, point of view? Yeah,
not even to change it, but just to help you to be more aware and more educated in the world around you. Like, you know, so I have students who think that they get so involved in the Democrat-Republican aspect when they want to be involved. You know, at your school, the kids want to be involved in the pension crisis and the effort to support teachers. But the same token, I try and stop and pause them, you know, and help them to understand that even though, regardless of what my political stance is, to help them think about, like, do you know where this argument even started? Do you really know what caused this pension crisis? Because if you think about it, it's not, when I hear the pointing the fingers of, oh, Republicans this, Republicans that, I'm like, do you really know how many Democratic governors passed this along as well? Mm-hmm. So just, and not being mad or being this, but just having them to explore that. And then they come back and it's like, man, this family, like, this person, I'm like, right. So just so that when you go and you hear your Republican friends speak in defense, you can have a little bit more empathy for them, because some of the things that you're advocating for, that you're pushing through, are you're supporting things off of what someone else has said, not necessarily what you know in the research and the facts that are out there. So challenging kids to think for themselves and get their own research, that academic challenge does indeed. I think that is a struggle that I think they should experience, so that as they grow older and when they cast that ballot, it will be an educated decision, not a hearsay one.
Gotcha. And just to be just a little more clear, so what's going over the barrier when it comes to over the line of have that struggle? Like, what is over the line struggle? Like, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. Anything when you're dealing with students, I think that, because I do believe in differentiated instruction. So what you have going on at home, hypothetically, if you have some things, your personality, you might have some challenges or a certain personality that might make things difficult. If I can give you that same information but in a different way, I think that that's something that we should do. Because it's not about how you give it as much as did you get the big idea. Gotcha. Did you get what we want you to get out of it? Not did you get the way I wanted you to get it, but did you get it, right? Mm-hmm. So anytime a student demonstrates a resistance to that in a way that emotionally harms them, I think that we should, that's over the top if we continue to do that once that student has shown behavior that this particular way is not the best way. I think that's the barrier. That's when you're like, no, we can't do that. We got to come up with a plan B.
Is there any advice, I guess, you would give first to the youth, most definitely, but also for maybe the teachers that maybe have a hard time, maybe less experience, etc.?
I try my best to tell my own children, as much as my students, to make learning an experience, right? Because you remember experiences. Mm-hmm. You remember how things make you feel. Like, and I think that's the big thing. It's just appreciate, like what you're talking about before, the struggle, the academic struggle. Appreciate those, and kind of embrace that chaos to a certain degree. So my advice would be to embrace the experience. Don't fight all the experiences, because you need to go through these experiences in order to grow. Mm-hmm. Right along with, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. And then surround yourself with people who will support you to the good and bad, and who understand the barriers. Okay. And if they don't understand the barriers, you have that particular person, you have others who will step in to help identify that that's a barrier and that there needs to be some type of intervention. Does that make sense? So that would be my primary piece of advice, would be to enjoy the experiences and embrace the experiences and just learn from all of them, good, bad, and ugly.
And I thank you so much for being here today, of course. This has been your teen host, Sydney Tucker, with Matter of Interpretation, Americans in Crisis. And as always, God's grace plus our effort. Thank you.